Hi everyone, in this video I would like to show you how to use Placer 2. This is a system that will help you to place objects in your scene. It can do it in many ways, so let's get right into it. When you import Placer 2, you will be welcomed with this Placer 2 welcome screen. There you can select the docs, which I advise you to read once you start. Um, you can open the Placer 2 manager, which we'll get to in a second. Go to my Discord server, which I advise you to do. Uh, I, I provide help there, or just leave a review. Although this is pretty useless here because you just opened Placer 2. But anyway, let's open Placer 2 Manager. I can close this window, and here you have some buttons, and each button corresponds to the window that it will open or add. So this editor window, these will open a window, and these will add to the scene. And here you can select Placer defaults, and it's pretty important to understand what these are. So let me just select them. Here they are. So just here. Now these are some default settings for the whole Placer 2 system. So like ground layer mask, so this is like the default layer mask that will be applied to stuff, and same with the avoided one. The work color is the color that will be that the window will be when you've enabled it. The save path is the save path of profiles that you can save, and here are some saved values for some spawners. I will get to these in a second. So let's open Painter, the main system of Placer 2. Let's just dock it over here, and here I can select an object or create. If I create, it will create a new Placer object holder. If it's missing, I can just select one and it will assign it automatically. And this goes for almost every window in Placer 2. So here you have, actually let me explain it from the Placer defaults, these values. So what they do, you can see in Painter values, I have two values, and here I have two buttons. If I click on one of these buttons, I will assign this. If I click on trees, for example, it will assign these values to this painter. So I click, and you can see I can now paint trees. So I can paint, and buildings I can place buildings. So yeah, if you want to add your own values, you can go to the bottom of the window. Each window that will have these buttons from the Placer value presets, which is Physics Painter, Painter, Bezier Curve, Spawner, Terrain Detail Populator, and Text Spawner, will have this section from here to here. You can add your own values from the ones you've selected by putting a name here and then save values to Placer default list, or you can override an existing one. If you want to remove a value preset, you have to go to the Placer defaults and remove it from here using this minus. So now let me show you how to use the Painter. So as you could see just before, you just click enable, and now you can paint. You have a preview, you have it preview how it will align to the terrain and stuff, and you have many features here. It may be useful to look at these and the tooltips that some of them have. So for example, here I can set hold activation, so now I'm holding and I'm not spawning anything, and if I enable the hold activation I can hold and spawn in a line, and these will spawn in the range of 4. If I set it to 1, there will be a lot of these, and you can of course undo what you just spawned. So there is the scatter mode, which scatters some trees. If I paint, it just scatters around. So if I just start dragging, you can see it scatters around a certain range. so you can populate large forests fairly quickly. Although there are features of Placer 2 that are better for populating large forests. There is the remove, which will, remove this, but to remove you have to have children, so you can remove only the children of this object. So I can remove only these, not other ones. So for example, I can you can just remove. And these first two trees were not there because I just stopped the video for a second to check something. So you can switch modes with alpha keys, so like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can even replace the painted objects here. So, well, it's useful to pick a different palette, but you can replace if you drag. And it's important to know that there is mass replace mode, and you can do max by distance, so now you'll be replacing in a range. It's way easier to do this, but sometimes it's more useful to do it with just by clicking. And there is mass by colliders, which may be better if you are using like if you're on a huge number of objects, but then you should use some kind of mesh thing to fix that. But these objects have to have colliders for this method to work, and I'm not sure if they have. So wait a second, I will just add colliders to a prefab and we'll resume the video. Okay, so I just added the colliders, and now with this object selected, with all of these objects, you can just enable and it will go remove by the colliders. So if you have a huge amount of objects, this method is more performant, because it will not go through like thousands of distances. Just find the objects. Okay, so this is about it for Painter. Let's just remove all of this and go to one of the most fun, you can say, spawners, which is Physics Painter. Here I will just go to a preset normal speed. There is a lot of settings, I will not be going through this right now, but they're pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, this section you can just avoid if you are not very good at physics. I mean physics in Unity. So if you just enable this, you can see that there are objects falling and they're being simulated like in game. So they fall down, they have collision. You can create really cool, like, I don't know, trash stacks or I don't know, dirty cities, something like that with this feature. And the cool thing is that if you switch a few settings, you can basically like make this super speed, so it falls almost instantly. So it's just a quick way to make it messy. Okay, or you can just do slow motion. This is pretty useless, but I mean, if you want to place a lot of objects and have them collide all at once, you can do that, and it looks pretty cool, so that's fun, I guess. So yeah, that's it for the Physics Painter. And now the Bezier curve. This is one of the cooler ones, if you ask me. So now you can spawn trees or walls. There is a spawn type. I'm just going to go with trees for now. Then with wall it's the same. What you do is click paint points, and then you can just spawn all of the points. There is pretty detailed preview of this. It has auto smoothing. You can do manual tangents, anything really that you would want. You can even remove points in the middle of this or add points in the middle of your curve in any part really. So yeah, you can create many things. You can like yeah, and you can then after you're finished, you can move these points manually, and tangents will, it will smooth out itself automatically. Just make sure after you edit this manually to snap curve to ground. You can spawn prefabs or even walls flying, but it's more accurate if you want it on the ground, if you put it actually on the ground. So then you click spawn and all the magic happens. Here actually I spawned inside of the forest a little bit, so let me just move the curve out of the way a little bit. Oh, and now I spawned on top of each other. Well, it's good enough, I guess. So now you can see it's like really cool way to populate. Like if you have some sort of royal garden, that's just what came to my mind right now. You can populate it with trees that are spaced really nicely, and there are many modes. Segmental may have better results, like you can think they're more even now, although that's just mostly because the scales of the trees are different. But you can do walls too. So if I just spawn the walls, they're spawned, but now you can see here, it's really rough. That's because the segmental mode, wait a second, the segmental mode um, um, does this like segment by segment, and you may want to like increase or decrease this curve steps. So now it's like really smooth here, and here is just like, if you look from above, it's actually really accurate to what the curve wanted. So yeah, that's the Bezier curve spawner. There are many modes like cubic, quadratic, and linear, which is just like smoothing modes. But the cubic is like smooth, and linear is just line to line, and quadratic is just a mathematic way of between the lines, between the lined one and the smooth one. And you can of course edit the tangent modes. If you do half manual, it will align the other tangent with this tangent. There is many options. There is the keep ratio or copy, and here, so if you keep the ratio, if you have, for example, copy is just going to like straight up copy one from none to another. None, it will just move only one of the tangents, and it will copy the rotation of the other. And keep ratio is useful when you have like one tangent way further, like in this case. Then if you move this one, it will keep the ratio so one is larger than the other. One is further from the point than the other. And you can, uh, if I do like this now, and now spawn, it was now spawn exactly like I wanted. So exactly like the tangents were edited. Because, it's a curve. And you can do fully manual, which will move just one tangent, but that sucks if you ask me. Like, it may be pretty useful in turns, but other than that, it just looks bad. You can of course clear the curve and draw a new one. And now actually on the manual, so it's not smoothing out. I can do auto smooth. So that's the Bezier curve spawner, fully done, fully explained. Now freeform. This is very cool too, if you ask me. Oh, okay, that was I don't know what that was actually. So you can draw a shape, any shape really. Let's do like this, and then actually let me just switch from buildings to trees, let's say, and spawn. And here is just it triangulates the shape. So if you just do like this, it uses some triangulation library I don't understand. So as you could see in the case before, it did not work, and um, it actually works when it doesn't work. You can just move the point a little bit and it will fix itself. I will try to make my own triangulation method, but I'm just not very good at that. So as you can see, it works perfectly now. If I move these a bit, it will work too. So it actually uses Poisson sampling inside of the shape. So you can see some places are more empty, some are further away. So that error with the empty space was probably because of that. Not sure though. Like, as I said, I really don't understand the triangulation method right now. So yeah, as you can see, it fills out the shape. And so yeah, that was probably just an unlucky thing, like unlucky spawn, I think, not sure. So yeah, now let's go to terrain details is, I'm not going to explain this one, but you just select the terrain, select a layer that you're going to populate, then the density, zero chance, just you select a few values, the max normals and stuff, and you have presets like in other ones. You just click populate layer 0, and after a while it's going to populate this layer, avoiding other terrain layers like this one, and it's going to avoid the high slopes. It's just speeds up grass placing a lot. It has pretty much everything you would want from a glass placer. 3D text, clean, let's just, I have to actually go to the object with this placer. So now you can just type here, and it's going to spawn representations of these words as prefabs. So these are prefabs. It can snap text on top of each other, snap to the ground, and stuff like that. So if you want to make like tutorial text more immersive and cool, I think this is a fantastic way to do it. Just this provided alphabet is not the best. Oh, there is no representation for this mark. Like as you saw, there is no representation for some letters, so it's going to throw errors. And there are offsetted centers. So, for example, the mesh here is offsetted. So yeah, the provided alphabet is not the best. I advise you to create your own. But except for that, the spawner works really well. So now object to tree, you basically spawn objects. So actually, let me just knock that over here, for example. This is this terrain, yes. Okay, perfect. So now the spawn under, I will just... so from what? Let's just... Noise spawner. Okay, so I just assign this. Okay, now with this terrain, I will just clear the terrain trees and prototypes, and I can spawn with the noise spawner. Okay, great. So this is spawned with avoidance, and it spawns some objects, and there is a pretty detailed preview here. You can see it aligns perfectly with what is spawned, the shapes. So let's just disable the preview. Now I'm using these shapes instead of the trees because the trees are prefabs with nested prefabs inside of them, and the mesh is like third in the hierarchy from this prefab. And terrain trees do not accept that. Terrain trees is actually really limited in what prefabs it accepts. So I'm just using here a prefab with a mesh on top of it as is. But if you have a mesh, like a tree, you can just put it on an empty object and it will work. It's just that these trees are two meshes, and I didn't combine these meshes, so I will just use these. Now you can click convert, and these trees are now terrain trees. It added these to the trees list, it copied the positions. Terrain trees do not support scales, I don't think. I don't know how long I've tried to do the scales. I mean, even not with the system, like overall with terrain trees, and it just didn't work. So you will have to have scaled meshes, most likely. So that's it for the game object to terrain tree. And the ground snap is pretty useless. Like it, uh, you can just snap an object. So if you have an object in air, you can snap it. Although wait, let's just move it here. You can snap it, and you can snap the children of it. It's certainly an interesting tool, and it can make for some pretty fast level designing, but not very much if you like spawn it with placer tools, because that will automatically do stuff for you. So now the runtime, it will just add on a tool if you click. So I showed you already what the noise spawner does. The grid spawner, you just assign some values. There are previews for these values, so you can see now I can spawn. It will take a while because there is a lot of objects to spawn, and the gizmos, I have enabled gizmos, so yeah, that slows it down horrendously. But yeah, you can see it spawns as the preview said. So I just enabled, you could see the preview has its distance, so yeah, now to optimize itself, it limits the render distance. So yeah, that's the grid spawner. Let's just choose the 12 here, spawn, and yeah, here is our cube. And you can spawn this, snap this to ground with this thing here. And then there is the poison sampling spawner. and this is a pretty cool method to spawn in a way that looks natural. So it will just spawn with avoidance to one another. So each tree is at least 2 Unity units, I think it's meters, away from one another. So yeah, and the positions are pretty random, so you will find some empty spaces here and some more dense spaces. So yeah, that's it for this, and that's it for this tutorial actually. I hope you enjoyed. Uh, if you saw any bugs in this tutorial, I think there was only one problem with this, the freeform spawner. It was probably by chance that there was an empty area, but I'm going to investigate that further, probably by creating my own algorithm, because for now it's just copied from internet triangulation, and it's from library. It's from some GitHub library. I don't know. I linked it somewhere. But anyway, here you can see. I mean, here you can't. Oh, I would almost forget. There is the island generation, actually. So it's not done for this tutorial, actually. So here you can spawn, and it spawns an island for you. It batches the trees, tries to not spawn on slopes, so you can see the trees are spawned on the smallest slope possible, while still keeping some distance from each other and from the chests. There is a base, there are rocks, there are cactuses. It's very expandable, so you can see there are spawners for each thing. So first there is the base spawn, then first there is the beach spawn, then there is the base, which is a big rock, then some chests, and then the trees. And the trees, for example, prefer to be free, so they avoid other objects. So, for example, they avoid chests, and yeah, they try to be on a very small tilt. No, on a not tilt. They try to be on angle 0 and will not accept anything 10 degrees off that angle. So they did not spawn on this slope, for example. And this system is pretty advanced. It's not very easy to learn, but once you do, you can really create some amazing things with this. So now that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. It's a long tutorial now that I see, and hope you have a good day. Bye bye.